Hello there, darlings. As some of you may know, back in December, November of 2023, I did an interview with Jeff from the channel of PTS for Life, where I told my story of having grown up in Scientology, working for Scientology in a different country. Originally, I'm from Switzerland, but then I was shipped off from Switzerland to England when I was 13 years old to work there for Scientology. And then I left when I was 20 years old, and I told my story on his channel. And after that had happened, sometime later, a activist from Switzerland, from Basel, the region where I actually live, her name is Yolanda, she actually contacted me and she said, look, I've got some contacts who might be interested to tell your story in a newspaper. I was a little hesitant at first, but then I thought, well, might as well, because I already have now sort of come out as an ex-Scientologist in a very public way on YouTube, so might as well do this on a newspaper. And so she got me in contact with a wonderful reporter called Andrea Haefely, and Andrea has been reporting on Scientology and cults for many years. As a matter of fact, there is a video on my YouTube channel where I talk about my Scientology schooling that I attended while I was in Switzerland. One of them was in Lucerne. It then was closed down because the city of Lucerne decided that a Scientologist cannot be trusted to not indoctrinate children. And that is why it was closed down. And then I, with my other classmates, we went to Zurich because there was another Scientology school, which is actually still active and working to this day. And so Andrea Haefely, she actually wrote a report back then about this school in Lucerne being closed down. So she's been at it for over 20 years. And so it was a perfect match. And I invited her to my home. And it were 2 sessions where we were talking. She recorded everything, asked questions, let me talk mainly. And she told me, all right, she's right now doing a couple of other stories. And as soon as those are done, she will dedicate her time to do that, to do this story. But that was not the only thing that took so long. What took so long were all the lawyers that had to go through the story and make sure everything was completely okay and fine, so that there cannot be any legal actions or any serious legal actions taken against the paper for publishing my story. And so now we are in August, and the story was published online. They have an online platform on the 1st of August, which actually happens to be the national holiday in Switzerland. In America, it would be like the 4th of July, except that we didn't actually fight for our freedom to be a country. We, in the year 1291, came together and decided, you know what, let's just start a country. So it's a little bit less epic, maybe, as the American version, but you know what I mean. Anyway, and on the 2nd of August came the actual newspaper. So this is the newspaper, BEOBACHTER, meaning the Observer. Now I do know there's a newspaper called The Observer in England. I don't know if there's a connection or not. In any case, that's where it was published, and it is a 3-page piece, and it starts at the page 24 and then goes to page 25 with a rather good picture of me, I have to say, and then of course page 26. There. Now I'm not going to read this out loud to you because it's in German, so most of you will probably sleep because of misunderstood words. So what I did, I took the liberty of taking the whole text and translating it into English, and I would be reading that out loud to you. There are some things that were a bit difficult to translate because there are like a saying. All right, so here's a translation that I've done. Before I start, for anyone who doesn't know my story, it does involve self-harm and trying to do the unthinkable, and that naturally will be mentioned in here. And I will not be reading that part out loud. You can read it alongside, simply because of the algorithm of the YouTube and the YouTube gods. They disapprove of that sort of language. So, but you'll get the gist of it, I'm sure. I have also taken a little bit of liberty here and there on 3 parts with translation. I've added a little bit, but I made those, I highlighted those in red to make sure that that is an addition I have made. There were a couple of times where it was difficult to translate because it was a saying, and it's a bit difficult to translate a saying, you know, at times. But I do hope I have translated it in a way that it is well understood. And of course, I do have to mention that it is a newspaper, so it is a little bit dramatic. The title, for example, I find it a little bit very dramatic, but you know, they do have to sell their newspaper, so I do understand. Anyway, let's begin. A Scientology child fought for the world. Samuel Sully was born in the totalitarian cult Scientology. He was physically abused and forced to do hard labor. After a long ordeal, he managed to get out. Samuel Sully was 9 years old when he signed a billion-year membership. The boy committed himself to fully submitting himself to the Sea organization, representing its values, following its commandments, and contributing to the success of its goals. It was not a fancy contract between children, but one with a paramilitary organized elite unit of the Scientology cult. The cult was founded in the 1950s by the American science fiction author L. Ron Hubbard. The billion year became 7. So the billion years became 7. He joined the Sea when he was 13 and left when he was in his early 20s. Slight correction, I was exactly 20. After a long ordeal, Sully, born on the 25th of May 1992, oh god, she just outed my age, as the youngest of 3 children, grew up in what was then Scientology's headquarters in Basel. His mother, an ardent Scientologist, divorced when he was 1 year old. The father moved out. When I was 2, she decided to go to the spiritual headquarters in the USA to become a clear. Now here she writes, a little correction, here she writes when I was 2. I'm pretty sure I told her I was about a year and a half old, but maybe she just rounded it up to 2. Either way, it's pretty bad, regardless if you're 1.5 or 2 years old, to just abandon her children, but never mind. Scientologists understand clear to be one of the highest levels of the human spirit. She stayed for 2.5 years instead of a few months. She had left her 3 children, 2, 5, and 6 years old, in Basel with a man she had met shortly before. He was in his mid-20s and had no experience with children of his own. Julie says today that it was a miracle that he got them all through this time safely. Only after her return did she make this man the stepfather of her children. Sully was a slight introverted child. I liked books and started very much early to study the writings of L. Ron Hubbard. He remembers how his feet didn't touch the floor when he sat on the chair during his training sessions, so-called training routines. Children are considered small adults. His mother told him from early childhood that he was a born-again Scientologist. When the shy boy complained to his mother because he once again had to hand out pamphlets to complete strangers, she only said, "It is your fault. You chose this body and our family yourself." He never had a normal conversation with her. No matter if I had a question about life in general or didn't know how to sew on a button, she always said, "Let's see what Ron said about that," and took the relevant book from the shelf. A child is a man or woman who had not yet grown to full size. Every law that applies to the behavior of men and women applies to children, writes L. Ron Hubbard in his book Child Dynetics. And look after the children? Nonsense. It probably has a better understanding of imminent situation than you do. Again, this is from Hubbard. Sully experienced firsthand that children are treated like adults with small bodies. At the age of 8, his mother had obtained an exemption from the organization. He was subject to the purification rundown. This includes hours of sauna session and taking a high doses of niacin. An overdoses of niacin, also called vitamin B3 or nicotinic acid, can cause red skin rashes, a drop in blood pressure, and dizziness. I fainted twice. They took me out of the sauna, waited until I came back to my senses, and put me back in. Then the auditing began. These are surveys using the so-called e-meter. They are intended to bring past negative events to light. The device works similarly to a lie detector. The test subject holds a wire with electrodes in both hands. They measure the skin resistance. If the needle moves, this should provide information about the truth of what was said. Scientific evidence of effectiveness is lacking. You have to admit to actions you never committed, such as stealing an apple. If necessary, you confess that you stole the apple in a previous life, says Zülli. They insist until the needle points in the direction of truth, no matter how long it takes. You learn one thing above all: lying. Samuel Zülli was 9 when a Sea Org delegation visited the headquarters in Basel. All 3 siblings were recruited. They said I would never have to go to school again. Of course I signed. I was 9. They also promised uniforms. He thought it was great. True. His siblings were sent to Denmark. A visit to the site was traumatic for the nature-loving boy. 4 bunk beds for 6 children in a tiny room. No pictures, no windows, a naked light bulb on the ceiling. I didn't want to go there. A little note on this thing. I actually found out that the room that I went to and so had actually a window. So that was something I recalled wrongly. I have been informed. All right, let's move on. Boot camp and drudgery. The mother decided to move with her son and his stepfather to St. Hill Manor in England, the former headquarters of Scientology. There, the 13-year-old joined the cadet organization. After the time in the cadets must go through a physically and mentally tough boot camp lasting several weeks in preparation for the Sea Org. Once they have survived this, they become full members of the elite force. 16-year-old Zülli was assigned to kitchen duty without any prior knowledge or inclination. We had up to 16 hours days, 2 people cooking 3 times a day for 350 people. I had to do the shopping and cleaning. Not I, but had to do the shopping and cleaning. Shopping is a bit of a bad translation. I would say we had to order all the food, and for a while we also went to London with a bus to pick up fruit and vegetable directly from the supplier, which saved us a couple of £100 doing that. But of course we didn't sleep for the night, and we were not able to sleep in anywhere else the following day, because of course we still had to cook the food and clean the dining rooms and wash all the dishes. So yeah, let me read that again. We had up to 16 hours days, 2 people cooked 3 times a day for 350 people, had to do the shopping and cleaning. On the first day he burned his forearm on a huge baking tray. Yeah, there was no pity. In the logic of Scientology, I must have done something bad or had contact with an antagonistic person. Otherwise, this wouldn't have happened to me. At 17, Zülli began to realize that he was homosexual. It was a terrible shock. There are few things worse in Scientology than being gay. You are seen as destructive, the ultimate danger to the community. Zülli saw the only way out was to do that, yeah. I actually don't know why I'm getting so emotional right now, because I've read this a few times, I've translated it. All right. At least I'm not wearing mascara. Okay, here we go. So that his, will not be traced back to the Sea Org. He wanted to leave. I was irritated that no one cared about my, thoughts or my resignation. Later, I was only recommended to go for half-hour walks every day to combat my bad thoughts, and if I didn't have the opportunity, I was supposed to spit on an object for 20 minutes. Sully punished himself with even more work. Cried a lot. Yeah, that's true. I never cried so much than when I did when I was working for the SEOC in St. Hill. And this little bit here about taking a half an hour walk or spitting at an object for 20 minutes, this is from a policy from Harvard. I believe it's called PUB 6, where it is a policy how to handle people who basically go insane. I was considered to be insane by Scientology. All right. Neither training nor school qualification. At the age of 20, he flew back to Switzerland to live with his stepfather, who had left the SEOC a long time ago. Well, a long time, a few years ago. St. Hill Manor was far away. The tormenting thoughts remained. After 3 months, I took poison, but my body vomited everything. Simon Sully attempted to do whatever, you know what I mean, 3 times. He barely survived the last attempt in 2019. The now 32-year-old did not have any training at the time, let alone a school-leaving certificate. Members of the C organization teached us more bad than well. This is a bad translation. It's a saying in German, but that's basically what it comes down to. They teach us more badly than well, if you know what I mean. None of them were teachers. Sully's stepfather got him a job in a restaurant. Yeah. It was wonderful. I received a real wage, very different to England, where I often only received £10 a week. There were regulated working hours, breaks, and you were even allowed to make mistakes. Yeah, here I need to interject that I was so shocked by that, like genuinely shocked at the money that I was making and so on and so forth. And my stepfather, he organized all of that for me. And I'm very grateful for him to have done that, to have taken me in, looking after me when I was 20 years old. I was already an adult. So I was an adult and he was divorced from my mother, and he's my stepfather. So, technically speaking from the law or whatever, he didn't have to look after me, but he did. And he organized me this job, and I'm very grateful for that. There were regulated working hours, breaks, and you were even allowed to make mistakes. The world of Scientology is binary. There are thetans, spiritual beings. Their condition is the goal of every Scientologist. Again, this is a bit badly translated, but what it basically says, what it means if in German is, the condition is the goal of every Scientologist, and the condition meaning like the condition of being a Scientologist and believing that you're Thetan. That is the goal of every Scientologist. So basically, disseminate as much as possible that everybody becomes a Scientologist. So, the world of Scientology is binary. There are Thetan, spiritual beings. Their condition is the goal of every Scientologist. Everyone else is the unenlightened. In Scientology speak, meat bodies, or raw meat. But little by little, Sully realized that meat bodies could also be good people. Even gays, like his 2 bosses, the innkeepers. That's right, that's what my stepfather did. He got me a job at a place where the 2 bosses, so the head chef and the head of the service department, but they both owned this restaurant. They were actually a gay couple, and my stepfather, he knew this, and he sent me there because he suspected at the time, I hadn't come out, but he suspected at the time that I might be gay. So very clever on his part to try to show me that, they are perfectly normal. Yeah, okay. But little by little, Sully realized that meat bodies could also be good people, even gays, like his 2 bosses, the innkeepers, and him. The military eventually helped him out of the cult. During my time in the RS, which is short for Rekrutierungsschule, which is the Swiss boot camp for the military, I was unable to take part in auditing or courses. This due to the time. Afterwards, Samuel Zülli wanted to start an apprenticeship as a chef, but his applications were unsuccessful. In the end, he completed his culinary training in the military. Fortunately, the pay wasn't enough for the Scientology courses, he said. I became more and more distant from the organization. At 23, Zülli ventured online for the first time, something unheard of in for Scientologists. This I have to correct a little bit. It isn't unheard of. Scientologists do go online, but what they won't do is they will not go out and seek anti-Scientology reports or interviews or anything like that. But that's what she was referring to, me going and actually looking at critical things. At 23, Zülli ventured online for the first time, something unheard of for Scientologists. He found content critical of Scientology and made contact with ex-Scientologists. He realized that other people have loving parents who let their children be children. At the end of 2017, so I would have been 25 years old then, he finally broke with Scientology. This also meant that he would never again have contact with his family members who are still in the Sea Org. Now this is a little bit dramatic because what I told her in the interview is that in 2017, when I was 25 years old, that was the first time I admitted to myself I'm not a Scientologist anymore. Now I could still have contact with all of my family members because I didn't come out publicly and say that I'm not a Scientologist and in fact I'm against it. But that's just how she wrote it, and fair enough. All right. Ex-members compared to the German guy with a little mustache. In their interview, in their view, he is now a suppressive person, and according to the doctrine, is in line with the gentleman with the mustard, although gentleman is being very polite, the a-hole with the mustard, drug lords and Napoleon. Neither Scientology UK nor Samuel Zülli's mother wanted to comment when contacted by The Observer, the newspaper. It was only last year that Samuel Zülli was ready to go public with his story. I would like to encourage other people who were also born into a cult. Incidentally, Scientology is monitored by the Office for the Protection of the Constitution in several German federal states because the cult's activities are not compatible with the basic principle of free democracy, free democratic basic order. Let me read that again. Incidentally, Scientology is monitored by the Office for the Protection of the Constitution in several German federal states because the cult's activities are not compatible with the basic principle of the free democratic basic order. In Switzerland, the movement is nowhere near as active as in Germany or Great Britain. However, it was already under official control in Switzerland because of suspected illegal work. Right. That is the article. So, my darling, this has been the report of the newspaper that came out on the 1st of August and then in physical copy on the 2nd of August of 2024. I think overall it is a very good report. It is quite short because there's so much more we could have put in there, but we were quite limited in the space that we had. But I think Andrea has done an excellent job. It certainly is giving the message of what it is all about. I do hope that many people will read this across different generations, that people who have been involved in Scientology, who grew up in Scientology, that they then can maybe contact the newspaper or contact me if they find my YouTube channel, and we can be connected, because I know there's so many Scientology children that grew up in the Basel org, and I would love to get in touch with them again. So I do hope you found this video interesting and informative. Please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel if you like my sort of style, if you like to follow my story and find out what has been going on. I have many more videos on my channel talking about my story, different chapters of it. Also for my German speaking audience, I have several German videos, and I will be making a German version of this video, much shorter, but a German version of this video. And with that, I do wish you an excellent and most marvelous day. Goodbye.